Podcasting, it's everywhere now, isn't it? Maybe you're someone who tunes in daily, or maybe you've just kind of started exploring. Feels like it just appeared, but how did this whole thing actually happen? For this deep dive, you, our listener, you sent us the sources, a whole stack, really, covering the history, the tech, the key people, the massive growth, why millions of you listen, how it's all changed, and what might be next. So our mission today is to really unpack that whole journey, go from those first little sparks to the global thing podcasting is now, and try to understand why it connects so deeply with people.
Okay, let's dig into this incredible story.
Absolutely. And it really starts with something surprisingly simple. The name itself.
Right, the word podcast. It's kind of neat, isn't it? Like a blend.
Exactly. That mix of iPod, the device everyone seemed to have back then, and broadcast, that classic media term. It was coined back in 2004, and it just perfectly captured that leap.
Wow.
Taking audio like radio, but making it personal, portable, something you control.
Yeah, the first time we really see it written down is from Ben Hammersley, a British journalist writing for The Guardian in early February 2004. He was actually looking for a word for these new downloadable audio shows.
And it just caught on like wildfire.
Pretty much, yeah, within that early tech crowd. Later that year, Danny Gregoire used it on a mailing list, the iPodder dev list, for folks building the software to handle these things. And then Adam Curry, the ex-MTV VJ, he was a huge early promoter and really helped popularize the term.
It still seems kind of funny it got tied so specifically to the iPod, even though you never actually needed one. Well, that's the interesting part. The iPod name gave it something catchy, right? And it rode the wave of the iPod's popularity. But the tech underneath meant you could listen on any computer, any MP3 player. The name just worked better than audio blogging or webcasting. Podcasts just stuck.
It stuck so well, someone tried to trademark it.
They did, in 2005. But it was already too late. The U.S. Patent Office actually cited the Wikipedia page for podcast as proof the term was already generic, too widespread for anyone to own.
Wow, Wikipedia in a patent case. That really shows how fast it spread. So the word we use all the time has this very specific, quite recent origin tied to the tech of that moment. But the tech behind it, that wasn't just one invention, was it?
No, definitely not a single aha moment. It was more like several existing technologies starting to click together thanks to a few key people who saw the potential.
Okay, so what were those foundational tech pieces?
The absolute core really was RSS. Really simple syndication. Now, it was already used for text, like blog updates. The genius part for audio was adapting it to handle enclosures, basically, attaching audio files like MP3s to the feed. Kristen Lewis suggested this back in 2000, and Dave Weiner, who was key in developing RSS itself, actually implemented it. This was the real game changer. It meant you could subscribe to audio and new episodes would just appear automatically. It turned RSS from just text updates into a way to deliver media.
Right. That automation is everything. Otherwise, you'd be checking websites constantly for new files.
Exactly. It was all manual before that. RSS enclosures made it a push. The audio came to you. Then you needed the files themselves to be small enough. The MP3 format was critical here, making audio files manageable for downloading and storing, especially back in the dial-up or early broadband days. And of course, you needed something to listen on. Portable MP3 players, especially the iPod after 2001, made listening on the move easy and, well, cool. Even though the iPod lent its name, any player worked. There were even some early attempts, like myaudio2go.com in 2000, that kind of had the same idea, downloading audio to players.
The building blocks were there. Who were the key people who actually put it all together?
Well, a few names really stand out. Dave Weiner, like we said, was crucial for the RSS piece. He specifically set up an audio RSS feed for Christopher Lydon back in 2003. And Christopher Lydon, he was a former journalist, a radio guy. He got it instantly. He used Weiner's feed on his blog at Harvard in '03 to put out audio interviews. His show, Radio Open Source, is often called one of the very first podcasts. And incredibly, it's still going today. He proved the concept worked for, serious content.
And Adam Curry. We mentioned him popularizing the name.
Curry was absolutely pivotal. He took it from just a tech idea to something more user-focused. He launched Daily Source Code in August 2004, and that was one of the first shows to really fly the podcast flag. But maybe even more important, he co-developed the iPodder software with Dave Weiner. That software, later called Juice, was essential for early listeners. It made it easy for regular folks to subscribe, download new shows automatically, and sync them to their player. That automation was the missing link. He also set up the first podcast directory with Weiner, which Apple later kind of built on. Curry really had the vision for what this could be, even before iPhones.
So it wasn't just one person, but a few key figures connecting the dots.
Exactly. And we should probably give a nod to other pioneers, too, like Todd Cochran, who started Libsyn hosting and the Podcast Awards, Dave Slusher with Evil Genius Chronicles, Dawn and Drew. They were all experimenting, pushing formats, even when the tech was clunky and bandwidth was slow. They shared that vision of sort of democratizing media.
It's amazing how these pieces and people laid that hidden groundwork for what we just take for granted now. But it stayed pretty techy for a while, didn't it? How did it make that leap to, well, everywhere?
Yeah, that's when the rocket really took off. Those first few years, maybe 2004 to 2008, was definitely small scale. The audience was mostly tech-savvy people. Libsyn launched in '04, one of the first hosts. Awareness was really low. Only about 22% of U.S. adults even knew the term podcast in 2006. Monthly listening was maybe 9% in 2008. It was mostly indie creators figuring things out.
So what lit the fuse?
The single biggest thing, Apple. June 2005. iTunes version 4.9 adds official podcast support. Suddenly, this niche thing has a clean, easy-to-use home inside a software platform that millions and millions of people already had. It made finding shows, subscribing, syncing to your iPod incredibly simple. Steve Jobs himself called it the next generation of radio. Apple jumping in gave it massive visibility, legitimacy. It made iTunes the main gateway for years. They even sent out cease and desist letters to protect the pod part of the name early on.
Okay, yeah, Apple getting involved is always a big deal. What came after that?
The next huge wave was the smartphone revolution. iPhone in 2007, then Android phone spreading. Suddenly, everyone had a powerful media player and the internet right in their pocket all the time. Dedicated podcast apps popped up, making listening even smoother auto downloads, playback controls, the works. And mobile data got better. That constant mobile access was just crucial. Listenership started climbing steadily. U.S. monthly listening hit about 12% by 2013. Still not huge, but growing.
And then Serial. I remember that. It felt like everyone was talking about it.
Serial in 2014. That wasn't just a hit podcast. It was a cultural moment. This American Life produced it, true crime. It just hooked millions worldwide. Fastest podcast to hit 5 million downloads back then. It did more than just entertain. It proved that high-quality, narrative, serialized podcasts could pull in a massive mainstream audience.
Right. It legitimized the whole format in a new way.
Totally. The impact was huge. It brought in tons of new listeners who'd never touched a podcast before. It showed creators the potential for really sophisticated storytelling. And critically, it made big media companies and advertisers finally sit up and take notice.
It went from a hobbyist thing to water cooler talk.
Exactly. After Serial, things really accelerated. The number of U.S. adults who'd ever listened jumped from 27% in 2013 to 44% by 2018. Big media players like the New York Times launched major shows like The Daily in 2017. NPR and the BBC had been in early, but now everyone was investing seriously. Then the VC money started flowing in, and you saw intense platform competition heat up. Spotify made a huge push around 2019, buying up companies like Gimlet, Anchor, Parcast, signing exclusive deals. YouTube also emerged as a massive place where people actually consume podcasts, especially with video becoming more common. And then the pandemic, 2020 onwards, gave it another boost as people's routines changed.
The growth numbers you see now are just staggering.
They really are. Globally, we went from maybe 330 million listeners in 2020 to over 500 million now. Projections are heading towards 600 million next year. And in the U.S., monthly listeners, 12 and up, around 158 million now. Just think, that was 9% back in 2008. And the money followed. U.S. ad revenue went from about $100 million in 2015 to over $1.4 billion in 2021. It's projected to hit maybe $2.5 billion next year. The whole global market could be worth over $130 billion by 2030. Just explosive stuff.
And where people actually listen, that's completely shifted too, hasn't it? It's not just Apple ruling the roost anymore.
Yeah, that's a really key change. Apple was dominant early on, no question. But now, their share of U.S. listening is somewhere in the 11-14% range. Spotify jumped in aggressively, buying studios, pushing exclusives, integrating podcasts right alongside music. They often lead now with maybe 17-26% of U.S. listeners. But the really big disruptor, maybe, is YouTube. It's become the top platform for actual podcast consumption for a lot of people, especially younger audiences and anyone watching video podcasts. We're talking 31-34% of U.S. use. Its huge existing audience and recommendation engine are powerful drivers. Other apps are still there, of course, but Spotify and YouTube are the heavyweights now, with Apple still very significant, but not the default it once was.
So from this tiny tech circle to hundreds of millions tuning in worldwide, the journey is incredible. The numbers tell a story of tech shifts, big players getting involved, and those breakout content moments like Serial. But okay, beyond the tech, beyond the stats, why do you, the listener, actually choose to listen? What's the core appeal?
The why. That's the interesting part, isn't it?
Yep.
And it's definitely multifaceted. One of the biggest reasons, cited by over half of U.S. listeners, is just convenience. It's audio. So, eyes-free, hands-free. It slots perfectly into our busy, fragmented lives. You listen while commuting, about 42% do. Doing chores, almost half, 49%. Exercising, 29%. Just walking around, 25%. It's the ultimate multitasking medium.
It just fills those gaps in the day perfectly.
Exactly. And the on-demand part is huge. You pick what you want when you want it. Pause, rewind, come back later. That control is really appealing compared to, say, scheduled radio. And being able to download for offline listening, big plus.
And the content itself, I mean, it feels like there's literally a podcast for anything imaginable.
That's absolutely another pillar of its success, the sheer range of content. Yes, you have the big popular genres, comedy around 30%, news at 22%, true crime somewhere between 10-19%, sports 18-23%. But the magic is how it caters to every niche interest, every specific passion you can think of. Podcasts delve into topics mainstream media often ignores. And because the barrier to actually making a podcast is relatively low, you get this incredible diversity of voices, perspectives, finding an audience. It's that classic long tail effect. People find stuff that speaks directly to them, which fosters deeper engagement.
And it often feels so much more personal than other media.
That intimate connection, yeah, that's unique. Listening usually through headphones.
Yeah.
The conversational style, it really does feel like you're right there, part of the conversation. That authenticity, the host's warmth, it builds trust, a real rapport. Storytelling works so well in audio personal stories, deep narratives, candid interviews. It builds loyalty. People talk about having a relationship with hosts, even though it's one-sided, that parasocial relationship idea. It's why host read ads can be so effective. You feel like you trust the recommendation.
So convenience, endless choice, that intimate feel. What else pulls people in?
Well, often it's that mix of learning and entertainment, edutainment. Around 55% say learning new things is a major reason they listen. Podcasts make complex topics accessible, whether it's history, science, learning a skill, whatever. You can learn at your own pace. But just as many, 60%, listen simply for entertainment. Escapism, laughs, thrills from true crime or fiction, it fills both needs. And sometimes more, 27% listen for encouragement or inspiration. Apparently, 36% have even tried a lifestyle change because of a podcast. About 30% listen to hear different perspectives, and 29% use podcasts for news, and they expect accuracy there. 87% say so.
And when you find those niche shows, it often builds a community, doesn't it?
Definitely. Podcasts act as focal points for communities. People connect over shared interests, favorite shows, beloved hosts. You see it in online forums, social media groups, sometimes even live events. For people with niche interests or from underrepresented groups, it can be incredibly valuable, like finding your tribe, those digital campfires. It's often very participatory, too, not just passive listening.
So when you think about why you listen, it probably touches on a few of these, right? It's clearly way more than just audio files. It's connection, learning, entertainment, and just fitting into your life. And as podcasting grew up, the way people make them must have evolved dramatically, too. It's definitely not just one person talking into a cheap mic anymore.
Oh, enormously. Yeah, early days, it often was just that. Basic setup, raw sound. But now, the variety in formats is incredible. You still have great solo shows, co-hosted chat shows, interviews are still huge, obviously. But then you get these highly produced narrative podcasts. Serial really paved the way there, using sophisticated sound design, music, editing to create these really immersive experiences, almost like audio documentaries or radio plays. You've got deep dive investigations, audio fiction, hybrids, mixing different styles.
And video keeps getting bigger, right? The vodcast thing.
That's a really significant trend. Yeah, heavily pushed by platforms like YouTube. Lots of creators offer a video version now. The sources mentioned that around 40% of U.S. weekly listeners actually prefer watching, even if they're primarily listening while doing other things. It's especially big with younger listeners, Gen Z. It definitely blurs the lines of what a podcast is and kind of pushes back against that pure multitasking advantage, interestingly.
And the sound quality itself, just night and day compared to the early days.
Totally. People talk about the sonic boom in podcasting. Early stuff could be rough, limited by gear and know-how. But now, pro-level gear is way more accessible, decent USB mics, portable recorders, and the software is just incredibly powerful now. Professionals use DDI, digital audio workstations, but even specialized editors like Descript make things like noise reduction, leveling, cutting out filler words really easy for almost anyone. There's much more focus now on sound design, music, sound effects, ambient sound to make things sound polished and engaging. Serial's production quality definitely raised expectations across the board, although there's still that interesting tension, isn't there, between that super polished sound and the sort of raw, authentic feel that drew people in initially. But yeah, with over 5 million podcasts out there now, good sound design is definitely a way to stand out.
And looking forward, AI is already creeping into the workflow.
Creeping might be underselling it. It's becoming a major factor, like an AI conductor working behind the scenes. It's streamlining a lot of tasks, improving quality. Think using AI to help prep content, drafting scripts, generating show notes, summarizing episodes. Transcription is huge. Tools like Otter.ai, Descript, Sonics churn out transcripts fast. That's vital for accessibility, for SEO, so people can find your show, and for repurposing clips for social media or articles. AI is getting really good at audio editing, too, automatically cleaning up background noise, leveling volumes so it's consistent, even intelligently snipping out ums and ahs or mouth clicks. Tools like Descript again, Clean Voice, Adobe's Podcast Enhance feature. They're getting powerful. And you're even seeing voice cloning tech, like from Podcastle, that lets creators fix a mistake or add an update using an AI version of their own voice without having to get the original speaker back in the booth.
That's kind of mind-blowing. So it's easier to create, but what does that mean long-term?
Well, it definitely lowers the barrier to entry even further, makes production faster, cheaper. But yeah, it raises big questions about authenticity, mainly. About whether everything starts sounding the same. How do creators use these powerful tools without losing that human touch, that unique voice people connect with? The human role seems to be shifting more towards creative oversight, directing the AI rather than doing all the grunt work.
It's really clear the sound you hear, the choices you have, how it's all made. It's changing fast. Video blurring lines, AI becoming a tool. So we've gone from that one word back in 2004 to this massive multimedia AI touch thing. What's the big picture legacy and where does it head next?
The legacy. I mean, it's huge. Podcasting fundamentally changed how we consume audio, maybe even media overall. That shift to on-demand, listener-controlled, absolutely democratized content creation gave a voice to so many people outside the traditional media structures. It carved out this really unique, intimate niche in the audio landscape. And the scale now, culturally significant, billions in revenue globally. It's arguably enriched public conversation by adding so many diverse voices and perspectives into the mix. Looking ahead, well, expect continued growth globally, especially in places like Asia Pacific, that's growing fast. The move towards video, that hybridization, seems likely to continue, which keeps pushing the definition of podcast. AI integration will get deeper, smoother, and the challenge will be balancing that efficiency with human creativity. We'll keep seeing those platform battles, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, others shaping distribution, monetization. That tension between the original open RSS system and these closed platforms isn't going away. Discoverability is still a massive hurdle. How do you find the good stuff among millions of shows? We need better curation, better algorithms. And maybe we'll see new formats emerge, more interactive stuff, maybe links to AR, VR down the line. Who knows? But I think fundamentally, despite all the changes, that core power remains. The intimacy of the human voice, that direct connection, and its unique ability to fit into our lives. Podcasting Story isn't just about podcasting. It tells you a lot about how all digital media is evolving.
It really has been quite the ride. From one word, a few tech hacks, to this global force shaping culture, learning, connecting millions, constantly changing with video and AI. Thank you so much for sending in the sources that let us dive this deep. It's been absolutely fascinating to unpack it all.
So thinking about that whole journey from a simple RSS feed to this multimedia AI-influenced giant, what do you think really defines a podcast today in the 21st century? And maybe how does the way you listen actually influence where it goes next?
Definitely something to think about next time you hit play. Until our next deep dive.